Why American soldiers killed all the guards of the Dachau concentration camp? On April 29, 1945, American troops of the 45th Infantry Division liberated one of Nazi Germany's most horrifying concentration camps, Dachau. What they saw inside shocked even the most experienced soldiers. Thousands of emaciated prisoners, mountains of bodies, and inhumane treatment of prisoners. Hundreds of people were found in nearby wagons, dead from starvation and disease. The Nazis did not even try to hide their bodies, believing that the Americans would spare them. This horror caused a storm of emotion among the soldiers. When they learned the details of the cruel experiments and torture, rage erupted. One of the machine gunners could not stand it and opened fire. After he was stopped, the command made a decision that shocked the Germans. The 560 German guards involved in the torture and murder were taken out and shot on the spot. Why did the U.S. Navy make a secret deal with the Mafia? During World War II, the U.S. Navy made a secret agreement with the Italian Mafia. In 1942, after a fire on the liner Normandy, which had been converted into a troop transport, authorities began to fear sabotage by German agents in the ports of New York. To control the ports, the government turned to the Mafia, and with the help of Mafia boss Lucky Luciano, who was in prison, established cooperation with criminal gangs. The Mafia protected the ports from sabotage and kept an eye out for suspicious personalities, including foreign agents. The operation was called Project Bribery. In exchange for their assistance, the mobsters received reduced sentences. As a result, the ports of New York avoided major sabotage, and the deal remained a secret for years. Why did the American command recruit the Navajo Indians during World War II? During World War II, the U.S. Army faced the problem of protecting radio conversations from Japanese cryptanalysts. Standard military codes were too vulnerable, and then came the idea to use the language of the Navajo, an Indian tribe whose language was incredibly complex and virtually impossible for outsiders to learn. In 1942, the Marine Corps Command recruited 29 Navajos to create a unique encryption system. In this system, English military terms were replaced with words from the Navajo language. Words for letters, numbers, and military units were developed. Later, about 400 Navajos joined the project and became talkers. They transmitted encrypted messages by radio, enabling communication between units on the front lines. This system became one of the most effective ways to protect military communications. Why were American soldiers insured during World War II? During World War II, U.S. soldiers were insured through the government's National Service Life Insurance Program, established in 1940. This insurance provided financial protection to the families and loved ones of soldiers in the event of their death, offering coverage up to $10,000, a significant amount for the time. Monthly premiums were automatically deducted from soldiers' paychecks, and coverage could be chosen up to a set limit. In addition, soldiers received health insurance that covered treatment for wounds and illnesses. The government also provided disability compensation, which provided support for veterans after their service. These programs were an important tool to protect American soldiers and their families during the difficult war years. Why did American soldiers attach ammunition to their helmets? This unofficial practice was popular among frontline soldiers and had several reasons. Chief among them was quick access to ammunition. In the heat of battle, every second could decide one's fate, and being able to instantly grab ammunition from a helmet was sometimes life-saving. It also helped distribute the weight of the equipment. A soldier's equipment was extremely heavy, and transferring some of the ammunition to the helmet reduced the strain on the belt and pockets. The ammunition on the helmet also acted as camouflage. They broke the smooth silhouette of the helmet, making the soldier less visible in the dense vegetation. One should not forget about the psychological effect. A helmet with ammunition looked impressive, which could scare the enemy and give the soldier more confidence. However, this method carried risks. A bullet or shrapnel hitting the ammunition could cause it to detonate, resulting in serious injury. What were the consequences of Prohibition in the United States? The introduction of Prohibition in 1920, aimed at reducing alcoholism, had unexpected and devastating consequences. An initial decline in alcoholic psychosis was replaced by an increase in crime, corruption, and the illegal liquor trade. Smugglers set up alcohol shipments from Canada and Mexico, and clandestine producers filled the market with substandard product. Mafia structures, such as the famous Al Capone organization, made millions on the black market. Prohibition exacerbated social inequality and triggered an upsurge in violence. The murder rate rose to 8.4 per 100,000 people, well above the rate after the law was repealed. Secret bars that served alcohol in teacups and medical prescription liquor became commonplace to circumvent prohibition. Legal businesses suffered, most breweries closed, and the economy suffered significant losses. Prohibition, despite good intentions, was a failure and was repealed in 1933. What price did the United States pay for the Vietnam War? The Vietnam War was one of the largest and most expensive conflicts in U.S. history. During the years of the war, from 1964 to 1973, the U.S. government spent about $1 trillion in today's money. These colossal expenditures included not only armaments, combat operations, and Army maintenance, but also social programs for veterans. However, the huge financial investments did not lead to the desired result. The war ended in defeat. Against the background of growing human losses, 58,000 Americans were killed, more than 1,700 were missing, and shocking brutality, the U.S. population increasingly expressed its discontent. The country was engulfed by massive anti-war protests that became a symbol of the era. Despite all efforts, U.S. troops left Vietnam in 1973, and 2 years later, the South Vietnamese government fell. The total casualties of the war, including civilian casualties, are estimated at between 1 and 3 million. How did the Germans shit themselves with calculations? In his interview, Professor Frank Golchevsky reveals the critical miscalculations of the German leadership in assessing the military potential of the USSR on the eve of the war. The Nazi command based its conclusions on 2 key factors: the consequences of the Great Terror of 1937 to 1938, when about 1.7 million people were repressed, and the results of the Soviet-Finnish War. The war with Finland was particularly telling for the Germans, which they took as evidence of the weakness of the Red Army. The logic was simple. If the USSR had difficulties in confronting a small Finland, the powerful German war machine would be able to win a quick victory. However, these calculations turned out to be fundamentally flawed. After the attack, almost the entire regular army of the Soviet Union was destroyed or captured within 4 to 5 months of the war. Only thanks to the persistence of the people and the commanders, by winter were transferred and formed new divisions. Volunteers were a constant stream of everyone wanted to protect their loved ones and went to the front. To quench our thirst, we ate snow because there were no other options for survival. What did the German remember after surrendering at Stalingrad? The surrender at Stalingrad was not just a defeat for me, it was a blow to all my ideas about war and human dignity. From the very beginning, humiliation awaited me. We were searched, taking the last of our personal belongings. They took away my watch, my leather jacket, and even my camera, which I kept as a memory. That feeling of defenselessness is impossible to forget, but the real shock came later. The Russians were clearly not prepared for such a large number of prisoners. Instead of transportation, we were chased on foot across the cold steppe. Those who lagged behind became victims of the cruelty of the escorts. Those who lagged behind were simply shot on the spot. We walked without food, water, or even minimal medical care. To quench our thirst, we ate snow because there were no other options for survival. The road to the camp in Frolov was an ordeal. On the way, we passed through ruined villages where we were met with hatred and contempt. We were spat at, stones were thrown at us, and sometimes something heavier,